All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is your favorite warlock practicing necromancer. And today I want to bring something forth, kind of like a stage two, if you will, or a level two, video two, whatever you want to call it. Um, Within the last month or so, I did a video on, I think it was like last week, I think. I did a video on stupidity in the occult. Okay, specifically that of the religious practices done by the JCI and how they put Bibles in the school and now made it a curriculum. Now, which also violates the legal laws for state and federal, um, constitutionally speaking. But this video is based off a Facebook group for male witches practitioners. And I've been seeing a lot of this type of behavior popping up in just not just witchcraft groups, but pagan groups, Wiccan groups, the sheer ignorance, if you will, and lack of knowledge. You got a lot of how should I say this? Anybody can claim to be a practitioner of something. But if you don't back up what you preach, you're seen as an immature, an amateur, plain and simple. You don't know nothing, and you're not going to be seen as nothing until you start putting forth actual facts, actual knowledge. And this is what a lot of people don't understand on social media because they are more interested in popularity, drama, and playing the role of the bad guy. Okay? Think of atheistic Satanism to the church. That's all it is playing the bad guy to the church. It's like the term warlock used in modern day practices being seen as a liar, an oath breaker, and a user, the overall bad guy. And until you actually start delving into the knowledge and the historical, the anthropology aspects, the archaeological perspectives, not just the folklore or the mythology. Hell, even if you get into the titles themselves, you'll notice that there are both male practitioners and female practitioners. So a male witch is not considered a witch, but a warlock, not a witch. A witch is a definition of a female practitioner. And I've done videos on this in the past, but in this case, I really want to speak on this one because it was the ignorance of it is so modern day that it was like that automated reply, if you will. And it's like, oh fuck. Here's another one that is just an idiot, if you will. And it kind of leaves you wondering who's going to step up to the plate and actually put forth knowledge. So here it is. If you look under the dictionary, it doesn't matter the year of the dictionary, um, and you look underneath the term necro, anything to do with necro, okay, like necromantia, necromancy. If you get under Nikia, if you get under um, necropolis, the city of the dead, if you will. You get under necrophilia, necro, whatever. It's all right there in a row. So you can actually do your own homework in that. That's one of the easiest steps to get into the understanding of the various different practices that were seen throughout history within necromancy. Okay. So, anyways, I found an article a while back and I posted this about 8 hours ago in this group. And And I even put the article, I put definitions and everything like that into it, especially modern day psychology. Okay. And this article, which I'm going to read, it will show you exactly what I mean. And I'll even go down through the comments. The Peruvian doctor Lucio de Castro published an article in 1942 that discussed a scientific perspective of cultural practices of the dead. Okay. For example, they didn't bury the body until 7 days later, basically the 7 day marker. As science grew, the medical understandings became more dominant. We see necromantic practices of the old world being broken down into psychiatry and sexology, and finally being viewed with an abstract arguments as to why this form of practice was popular. In 1943, Castro published an article called Revista de Sanidad de Policia. Okay. Now I probably just butchered that because my Spanish, my Latin is, my Spanish, dialogue is not that good. I'm working on it, but it takes time, especially when you're learning a language. Luckily, I've got an apprentice that speaks this, so I'm getting better at it. But you spell this as, let me see. First word is Revista space DE space SANIDAD space DE space PILICIA. Okay, that's how you spell this article. Okay, so you can actually Google this article yourself and actually read down through the whole thing. So, anyways, yet he failed, in my opinion, as to ascertain the ideals of why husbands, such as the story of Herodotus, who through rage murdered his wife by a fit of anger and then had relations with her corpse. Okay, this is necrophilia. Okay, which is basically sleeping with a body, a dead body, if you will. And yet we see other forms such as mourning the dead, where a spouse lays with the loved one's corpse for days. The ideology that this is morally wrong is or right isn't a matter of psychology or sexology, but more of a funeral mourning session of goodbyes. There is nothing wrong from a thanatology perspective and viewpoint that suggests that such an impact of emotional disturbances or ambient feelings would bring disease or defilement upon the dead or recently departed. It's a vessel. The spirit or ka has already fled the body. The decay doesn't start for something. So, therefore, most cultural views of funerary rites is normally 7 to 10 days after the death. Okay. But like spoken above, we now have thanatology, anthropology, oh my god, I can't even freaking speak this morning. I think I need to go get more coffee. I apologize. Neurology, psychology, and counseling denominations on top of various spiritual and religious beliefs. No wonder the lack of understanding is so chaotic. Okay. This is what I posted in this group. Okay. And I've already gotten 4 comments on this. And I wanted to kind of just go over this because this is something that a lot of people don't understand. They don't have the grasp of what they claim to know. And even if they did, Are you too ashamed to put it, to put it forth and actually share your experience and your knowledge, even the references of where you got it from? So the first one is a guy by the name of Richard Chirilero. I probably butchered his name, and I do apologize if I did. And he put, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, and maybe I'm just tired, but what? Is this a post justifying necrophilia? Now, what did I just read to you? It's not just medical denominations, but it's also religious and spiritual belief structures when it comes to funerary rites. Okay, this is the ignorance that I'm talking about. It's not about disrespect. It's more about the lack of education. Okay, and I always support anything to do with education because the more education you have, the more you can grow, adapt, and learn. Okay. Now, Seth Timothy replied to him and said, it does sound a little, manic or schizophrenic, doesn't it? Dude's profile is pretty weird. A troll, maybe. And Stefan Houvet replied, wouldn't come round for tea. Okay. But those are just the ignorant, you know, replies, the uninformed, the lack of education, and it clearly shows this. Now, I haven't replied to any of these, and I probably won't, because I put forth my essays that I've had published in the group as well, so that they can go under and track the references. They can track the historical accounts from various different spiritual beliefs, such as the how should I say this, the Hashishin, the Shem priesthood. You got the Dukan, Satanism, necromancy perspectives from the Oracle. Say, for an example, the different cults like the cult of Anubis, the cult of Artemis, the cult of Isis, and so forth, and all the way up to Kakashi, the Deathless, because I didn't just go into the gods of necromancy. I went into what necromancy is, how it is perceived. I went into the tools. I went into the priesthood. And I have so many different essays that I've written, 4,000 words and above, that I'm going to be adding into this group. And I think it will help them with their understanding and kind of go, oh, there is an actual anthropology perspective underlying all of these posts and what he was saying. More so, I think it will educate them in a way that will bring fruition to their lives, especially if they claim to practice necromancy, like this guy here. Stephen J. Julian. That's Gillam. Okay. Stephen J. As someone who practices necromancy, no matter how you frame it or perceive the body, defilement is not okay. Not psychologically, not spiritually, and definitely not morally. Practice of necromancy comes with an inherent belief in the soul or spirit of a person and should include a reverence for both. For a person, the memory that will live on of them will be through the memories of others, while traits and exploits will be the subject matter. The body will be what is remembered. Doing those things. The vessel is just as important to the people. Defiling a corpse is defiling the memory of that person as well. Funerary rites may change by culture, but the reverence and respect does not. Okay? Does not ever. Even if we examine it from the perspective of the body merely being a vessel, the perspective still does not encourage the concept of defilement. There are reasons why scientific study and pursuits are kept separate from religious metaphysical schools of thought. There is a detachment from what is being studied that does not lend itself well to latter. Not overlapping magister is a very necessary concept exactly for reasons like this. Psychology is only permanent when helping someone prepare for their passing. Okay, first of all, psychiatry has nothing to do with helping somebody pass. That's thanatology. Okay, now thanatology is, think of it like hospice, CNA work, certified nurse's aid. Think of it like a priest or priestess going in and listening, doing sacraments, prayers, and stuff like that. Okay, because you're not just helping the person going through the ordeal of passing or getting ready to pass, but you're also helping the community and you're helping the family that knew the individual. That's thanatology. And yes, psychology is a small portion of that, but you don't really have the full understanding of what that means. Okay, and he doesn't even go into that. Okay, so thanatology is fine for understanding a dec, director. Like I said, I can't speak today. I apologize. A decay, etc., and for the purposes of preservation. However, neither are core to the practice. Objectively, in this matter, leads to carelessness at best, and inadvertence or depravity at the worst. Even the left hand path traditions, while embracing cultural taboos, at most would only seek to turn soul and spirit into a servitor. In the order to likelihood, cannibalism would be performed on the body before the thought of defilement ever entered the process. I can understand to a degree the urge and desire to come off as edgy while working certain paths, but this is a bit much even for that. Any kind of self empowerment gained from such act by anyone on the left hand path would be perceived as pathetic. You are not establishing any form of dominance or control by defiling a corpse. There is no will left to be bent or broken, nothing more to take and nothing to be gained. There is a point where intellectual masturbation leads to spiritual psychosis. This post is at that line. Okay, first of all, what did I read you? Okay, and this shows you where selective thinking comes in. Okay, selective thinking. What is selective thinking? When you put a post or a comment forth, people pick out a certain term or phrase, and that's what they focus on, not the overall work itself. Okay, nowhere in nowhere in the post that I posted did it say anything about bending somebody's will to mine. Nowhere in the post did I say anything about controlling something or someone. Okay? So Stephen is wrong on a lot of different levels, and this is why. Okay? First of all, like I said, if you look at the perspectives of what necromancy is, what degree of knowledge do you have and what path working that you have in that system of magic? Okay, number one, there is no such thing as a school or a tradition. If you go back to, say, for an example, the 6th century BC, a solitary practitioner. Every religious belief, from the tribal communities of Africa to the indigenous Native Americans, you have a healer known as a shaman. Okay? A shaman, not a coven of shamans, but a shaman. If you go to the tribal traditions of Africa, it was a mambo or a hungan, a bokor or a kapilata, being, if you're in today's views, being initiated or not initiated, being the devil worshiper or the god servitor, if you will. Okay? And I use the term servitor very lightly and loosely on this, is approached by the tribal chief upon hunting, fishing, say marriage counseling, you name it. You look underneath the title of what a witch or a warlock was through, say, for example, European tradition. These were the keepers of the secret knowledge. Okay. And what even more interesting is, even if you get into, say, the middle um, cultures such as Babylonian, Sumerian, Akkadian, you have the mage and the sage. Okay. The mage being the male, the female being the sage. Okay. You get up into Anglo-Saxon, or you get into the Welsh definition, you have the term witch, which was a female practitioner, and the warlock was seen as an oath breaker, a liar, and a betrayer. Okay, not a coven or a school of practice, but a solitary practitioner. Okay. Furthermore, even if you get into the Scottish traditions, okay, say Sweden, for an example. The Swedish is the best one that I can come up with, because that is the Hexa, Haxa is how you pronounce it and spell it, by the way. About 75% of its practitioners were female. The other 25% were male. But it was also known as the very name of witchcraft itself. If you think of the Caribbean tradition, brujeria, that is not just a practice of witchcraft, but it is also the type of sorcery that you practice, okay, in today's world. So it's not just a lifestyle that you're doing through witchcraft and practices thereof, but it is also who you are and what you're about. Okay, it is a ancestral lineage at that point. So the Caribbean traditions, such as voodoo, or say, for an example, Palo Mayumbi, Palo Monte, Quimbanda, Luceria, Lucuma, for an example, not Luceria. Even if you get into, say, the Dukan of Indonesia and Malaysia, you're going to see how this is passed down in a family lineage. Okay. Now, a lot of times when you get into European and Middle Eastern descent, you're going to see it is nothing but a solitary practice, not a school of thought. You're looking at the Roskina, for an example, that was broken down into, which was 15th century work. It was a grimoire known as the Red Book. And this was put forth by a Catholic bishop, by the way. And a couple of descendants after that tried to get their hands on it after he went to hell, apparently, because of it. So, and they failed miserably. So now you have, from that book alone, in the northern realms, if you will, the northern kingdoms, such as Scottish, Irish, Welsh, European traditions, this is where the school of thought comes from. Okay, because now you have the northern school and the southern school that was from the Roskina that was actually broken up. Okay, so thinking of this as a school is or tradition of schools is not accurate. Shows you can speak the big words all you want and try to make yourself look intellectual, if you will, but without backing it up with numerous sources, you're just blowing smoke up somebody's skirt. Okay, so this person claimed to practice necromancy. Okay, now let's look at the legal system. Okay, today there are between right here in the United States. If you look at the legal laws from state to federal laws, there are 666. Now that goes along with the Bible. The Bible, okay, 666. Okay, free score. Okay, the mark of the beast, if you will. So now the Ten Commandments, when you break those Ten Commandments down, is viewed in this. Okay, so getting along with a seer, a truth sayer, anybody that practices necromancy is considered to be vile, someone who's considered to be unclean. But yet, if you go throughout history and say the Welsh, the European traditions, you'll see titles such as the gravedigger, the mortician, okay, the priest. Even in Europe, in African traditions such as Giza, the Shem priesthood were run out of town after performing rites and rituals for the dead because they were viewed as being unclean, unsanitary. Okay, this is where that comes from. So when you look at the legal laws, it's ironic that right here in America, for an example, there's all kinds of legal laws that represent the protection of graves, even from defiling a body, which is true, by the way. There is a lot of laws that protect the body from stuff like this. But cannibalism, cannibalism, which still goes on in third world countries, by the way, like the Amazons, is legal in the United States of America. Legal. I kid you not, it is legal. I had a friend of mine, he was 19 at the time. And I got to know him. This guy's now a hardworking kid. He joined the army for a while, and now he runs his own business. And actually, I don't know if if he runs his own business, but from what I understand, he was actually into the alternative teas, if you will. He was working for some millionaire down in the South somewhere. It's been a while since I've talked to him, so I'm not really up to date on what his curriculum is. But so yeah, necromancy within the acts of necrophilia is actually there. And historically speaking, all of this stuff from necrophilia to sleeping with the dead, it goes with vampiric practices, it goes with necromancy, nakia, utilizing the bones of the human or animals fits into play. Even blood sorcery, known as hemomancy, practices go into play. Okay, so all of this stuff, even if you go, if even today, you get a lot of practitioners that like to go into the graveyard, the necropolis. Okay, the necropolis is where you go into the city of the dead. All right, so this person clearly doesn't practice necromancy like they said. He has a lot of knowledge, yes. Having that kind of knowledge and practicing are two different things. For an example, if you're utilizing vile magic, let's go with cursing. Knowing the bones, the small bones being, say, for an example, of children, who have died, you can utilize the bones, and they utilize the bones in ancient practices for cursing. Okay, these are good for hex bags, gris bags, mojo bags, modern day curse jars, if you will. And this mixed in with rare coins, like say silver coins with say hieroglyphics on it, or some sigilliums, for example. can be placed in there with certain herbs, such as hemlock, henbane, sulfur. Especially if you're calling forth and attaching a spirit, like say that of a murderer. In Pedo Mayumbi, you can purchase the soul or the spirit of a convicted murderer that has passed away, and utilize that spirit by placing it on somebody else. This is a spiritual and cultural belief in what you can do. It is much like utilizing the blood for significance of power. Human blood is very potent. This is why sexual fluids are, in most traditions today, associated with necromancy, witchcraft, curses, hexes, sex magic, if you will, sexology. So to say that this stuff doesn't apply or isn't up to date, edgy, or whatever, you obviously don't know history. You obviously haven't done anthropology practices. You obviously haven't delved into folklore, mythology, historical accounts, and how these tools play into a particular field of practice. Okay? Now, was it bones in itself? The medium bones were seen as feminine. These could be used for healing. You can take bones and make them into powders. You can make them into consecration of a religious foundation. I mean, hell, Catholics have done it for how many years? I mean, what was it, just a year or two ago, they found about 12 to 1,300 people buried underneath a monastery in Canada, a school, a Catholic school. And you want to say that this is morally wrong? Then why have Christians, Catholics, butchered their way across the world, wage war on anyone that didn't have their perspectives? Masculine bones are great for cursing, especially for condemning somebody to death. Okay? Bones are very powerful. They're even used in runes. This is called bone divination. Okay? So human bones play into effect. Necrophilia, on the other hand, for necromancers is to get close to death as possible. If this means sleeping in a coffin, going to a mausoleum and sleeping on top of a coffin for a night, that's necromancy. That's also associated with nekia, which is not just physical but also spiritual. Okay, that's ancient Greek, for those of you who are wondering. So, let's delve into this even more. You talk about memories of that person, okay? The living are the only ones who remember that person for a generation, maybe two. Then you're forgotten. The only thing that even resembles that you were here was if you were lucky enough to make it into the history books, a museum, and or your tombstone. If somebody bothers to clean up the cemeteries and keep it looking good. I think right now I've only seen one person, maybe two, that go into cemeteries and literally clean up the tombstones from, say, 100 years ago, 200 years ago. Wow. Interesting how that works, right? So, who defines what's morally acceptable? Who defines what somebody else's beliefs is? That would be the church. That would be Christians. That would be Catholicdom. Because if you follow, say, for an example, Nicholas Remy's book of demonolatry, you'll notice that not only does the church go after women and literally see them as inferior, that need to be controlled by a man, but you look at how many of them were condemned just in that book alone, with actual dates spanning back about 500 to 800 years. Okay? What tools were found on them? Nicholas Remy himself in chapter 1 literally speaks to three different powders: one that kills, one that makes sick, and one that heals. Something that was always found on witches. Okay? You go into the hexa, you get into herbalism, plants, you get into European based traditions, and you get into poisons. You look at how many poisons were utilized by those who practice Catholicdom. Ooh. But yet, somebody who practices necromancy is vile and evil. A devil worshiper. Wow. Okay. So, you look at funerary rites, things from organ removal. Okay. This is the mortician removing the organs, because certain traditions, like, say, the Shem priesthood out of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, or the Book of Thoth, if you will, the Green Emerald, okay, they removed four major organs that they thought the individual would need if they were ever reanimated. Okay. And they were put in jars and concealed. The bodies themselves were cleansed, with water. They were mummified. The wound sewn back up, their brains removed with a little stick that looked like modern day fish hooks, if you will. Wow. Okay. And if you follow Egyptian traditions, these weren't just placed in a sarcophagi, but they were buried with the individual in general. Interesting how that works, right? Even if you get into Greek and Roman necromancy, then you're going to see things like urns, divination tools, grimoires being buried with the sorcerer or sorceress. Interesting. Okay. Funerary rites differ from region to region. Some believe that every day is a day of celebration, like down in New Orleans. If you go into Haitian voodoo practices, you have the zombie. This is why great care was always surrounded to make sure the person was actually dead and not turned into a zombie, or could be turned into a zombie by a bokor. They were walled up and sealed up in a tomb. Some were even buried. Okay. Now, the powders lowered the aging process. It lowered the heartbeat. It had mind-altering narcotics, such as the poison of a pufferfish, a gallbladder of a pufferfish. You have gases from toads. You have the poisonous extract from tree frogs, and everything else that came after that was unique to the individual bokor. Wow. But yet, how do you associate this with funerary? You claim they're separate. Wow. Interesting how these examples play into effect here. Even in European traditions, when we're dealing with vampirism practices, the stake in the heart, for an example. If a horse or an animal eluded a certain grave, then that grave, the person that was in that grave, was most likely seen and viewed as a vampire. So they would dig it up and cut off its head and shove a stake in its heart, in the corpse of the body. So is this not classified as necrophilia? Is this not classified as defilement of a body? I mean, it's been done for hundreds of thousands of years. This is nothing new. So you call it a vessel. Yes, it is a vessel. But if you think about it, even in a scientific perspective, even a medical perspective, the spirit is separated from the body. It's left the body and moved on. What most people realize to be the soul and the memory of that soul, especially that of the recently departed, is called literally conjuration of a spirit. Okay? The conjuration of a spirit is where you utilize geometric shapes, such as a circle of empowerment. Today, in Wicca and paganism, it's called the circle of protection. Okay? And you utilize the triangle of evocation. You use a griscus bag full of smelly herbs. Oh, look, what did I just say earlier? Herbalism. Ooh, interesting. Bones and coins, something to attract a specific spirit. I Have you ever heard of Eliphas Levi, for an example? How about Francis Barrett? Just to name a couple well-known occultists from two different traditions. Eliphas Levi went to England in this manner to practice necromancy. He was invited into a secret society and met with a female dressed in funerary clothing. I'm talking the fishnet over the face, the gloves, the black clothing, the whole ken caboodle. And she gives him a scroll. Gather these rites, these tools, and at this hour, perform this rite. Wow. He conjured a spirit. The spirit did not stay in the triangle of evocation, but moved to the side of him. Now, he even said that when the spirit touched his arm became painful and he could not lift his arm. It went limp. Wow. Okay. Okay. Hmm. And the story was even, you can find this in the Doctrines of High Witch, what is it? Doctrines of High Witchcraft. Okay. By Eliphas Levi. You can even go into the book known as the Magus, put forth by Francis Barrett, and you can see this. Go into various older traditions, such as the Faustbach, the story of Frankenstein and his monster. Oh, this is the Germanic tradition, 15th century, where blood sorcery was introduced due to the vampiric nature of immortality and rejuvenation process. Wow, okay. Different body parts from various different corpses made this being. Electricity brought him to life. But yet, in the story, that now isn't considered to be a magical play, a classical play. It is seen as Frankenstein and his monster. But back then, it was called the Faustian Deal. How you brought forth Mephistopheles. Wow, okay. Interesting how that goes, right? So you have all these sources of funerary rites where some would sleep with a partner. You have rites such as the what the hell's the name of that rite? It's the Sin Eater, and you can Google this. Right up until the early 19th century, it was viewed where somebody would come in and eat the Last Supper, therefore removing all the sins of the person that was dying. Wow. Interesting how that goes. But yet you want to talk defilement of corpses being morally wrong. Okay. Let's go into Homer's Odyssey. How about the views of sacraments by Dante's Inferno? How about Paradise Lost? Okay. Hell, how about the poetical texts, the 3 days that Jesus Christ was supposedly in hell, removing Beelzebub from his throne and placing, say for an example, Satan on the throne. Ooh. Now, keep in mind, what did they do to his body? What did they do to his body through the crucifixion? Wow. Where did they put his body? Huh. What about, wow, interesting. All these sources. And defilement, necrophilia. Yeah. Okay. So you obviously don't know what you're talking about. Stefan Delmo. What's going on? So let's go down a little bit here. So, like I said, I've covered the memories, I've covered the vessel, I covered defilement here. Let's go on. Now let's talk about the scientific study in pursuits, separate from religious and metaphysical schools of thought. Now I've already spoken on the schools of thought. Okay, but let's cover the scientific uh, exploration of this. Okay, all right. How do we know about the human body and how it works today from a scientific perspective? If somebody did not go in and defile a corpse, learn that the brain controls the organs. The organs, such as the heart, pumps blood throughout the cardiovascular system. The lungs oxygenate the muscles and the blood. Hmm. Pumps oxygen to the brain. Hmm. Okay. So, how does the digestive system work in this case? Okay. Let's go to the 16th century through the 18th century. England, European traditions. Let's go with, since he mentioned schizophrenic, schizophrenia in this text, depravity, if you will, the carelessness aspect. Hmm. Now let's see. They chain somebody to a chair and dunk them in ice water. Now, what was the purpose of this experiment? When it came to diseased or damaged brain cells, okay, this was said to kill off that portion of the brain that was diseased or defiled. Okay, something that was dead. Okay, necro, if you will, the corpse, the body, the organ. Then we go into electrocution. Electrocution was a way to reset the body. You reset the mind. Huh. Interesting how that works, right? Today we know them as an EMP. We know them as a defibrillator. Okay, this takes you from what do they call that? Was it defect, something like that? It's like D something, where the heart's in a unregulated state, and when they use the defibrillator, what they're doing is they're resetting it and putting it back into the ordinary state of flow or flux, if you will. Even the use of the electric chair or the gas chamber. How would you know what type of gas to use that is most effective if you don't do an autopsy on a corpse? How do you not know the level of amps to use on an electric chair if you don't study the voltage um, pathways of burns throughout the internal organs and on the body itself? Do you view that as defilement of a corpse? Do you view that as morally wrong or acceptable? Do you view that as scientific or religious practice? Hmm. Okay, let's go back to ancient Babylonia. How about we go into Moloch? Okay, Moloch. Okay, those of you in demonology know who Moloch is. Those of you who don't, you can look him up. He's a demon. He's a king, and he's represented by a big giant calf. Now he's known as the Prince of the Valley of Tears, and this is in the valley of just outside of Jerusalem, known as the Valley of Mount Hinnom. Okay. And this is where funerary rites were taking place. Okay. It was a big, big boiler where hundreds of corpses were tossed in and they were burned to ash. Hmm. How would you know how hot the body, how hot the furnace had to be if you did not do your homework and scientifically practice pyromancy, pyromancy practices? Okay, pyromancy practice. Wow. How hot does it have to be to incinerate a body into ashes? Hmm. You're looking at 4,000 above. Yeah, 4,000 and above. Yep. Okay. So knowing that it's in the shape of a calf, and they molded it into a calf structure, then they put the body in, light it, they burn it. Hell, even in European traditions, one of most the most heinous, if you will, of torture was putting somebody in a elephant, a metal cast iron elephant. And technically, it was a bull. I can't remember the type of bull. I want to say it was it was some kind of like bull. It depends on the story. It's either an elephant, an elephant, or it's a bull. And basically, they light a fire underneath it, and it heats it up to painful degrees of where you're dehydrated, you're hallucinating, you're basically cooking to death. Is that morally wrong? Even in cannibalism, they tie you to a stake, or even to a pole, and roast you over fire. It's basically the same technique, just a different tool, different method. Wow. So, are these not funerary rites? Are these not scientifically proven rites that work, that became associated with religious beliefs? I mean, look at the crucifixion. I mean, they're still worshiping a man that died on a cross. I mean, he was literally stapled to a fucking wooden cross with railroad spikes through his hands and ankles. They shattered his knees so he couldn't support himself. And he suffocated. It was asphyxiation, a method of death. Took 3 days in some cases. Wow. Your lungs are filling up with fluid, and you're slowly asphyxiating to death. Like having a python, bull constrictor, or anaconda wrapped around you, squeezing your entire body. Wow. Interesting how that works, right? But do you see these as morally wrong? Do you see them as funerary rites? I mean, Christians today refer to it as the death, the burial, and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Wow. Now, what did his body and blood represent again? The blood of the lamb and the bread. Ooh, do you break? Wow. Okay, how about animal sacrificing? Let's go with the Hebrew and Jewish rite, the Yom Kippur, where an animal was sent down over an extremely sharp, rocky cliff, and you had people at certain intervals to report back on how far that animal got before it could no longer move, walk, or otherwise, because its limbs were severed, cut, torn up because of those rocks. You call it sending one of them out to the desert, to Azazel. Wow. To represent all your sins, and the other one to your God, Yahweh, Yeshua, Jesus. Wow. Allah, even. You see, depending on you can call it the school of thought if you wish. It's more of a religious perspective, but it's still scientifically proven. If you actually delve into this, these tools that were used for conjuration and reanimation procedures to, say, for an example, spiritual ascension and descension rites, such as Jacob's ladder found in the book of Mark, okay, or the Gospel of Mark, rather. Or you can go into, say, Homer's Odyssey, the descent into the underworld through necromantic rites and rituals. Um, Even demonic summonings, such as the Red Book of Appen, or, say, for an example, the Faustbach. How about the scientific proof found in the Munich manuscripts, going as far back as the 12th century? Wow. But yet, necromancy and shamanism are the two most ancient practices out there today. And you claim to be a practitioner and know nothing of this. You didn't even put any of this through your post, through your little comment. Okay, you bring in even the left-hand paths while embracing cultural taboos. At most, would only seek to turn the soul and spirit into a servitor. Okay, let's talk about that for a minute. What is a servitor? You have what is known as a spiritual guide. Okay, ancestral lineages, such as the African Caribbean traditions, have an ancestral lineage where their ancestors who practiced before them are with them and can be called forth for wisdom and knowledge. Okay, this is called, again, you're looking at conjuration. But if you're talking the Yaganga, or the cauldron, if you will, the house of the spirit, the spirit box in necromancy, you have the spirit jar, if you will. And yes, I even have a spirit jar for a brother of mine that I have activated, and he can come and go as he pleases. I have a spiritual box, a spirit box that I use for the gods and goddesses that I commune with, my patrons and patronesses. Okay? These are things that are associated with the left-hand path. Look at even the right-hand path. Look at the Dibbit box found in Jewish mythology. It is there for baneful or malevolent spirits which cannot be associated and get along with humanity, the realm of the living. So if we go back into the book of Genesis, for an example, or the book of Giants, okay, how about the scroll of the scroll of Adam and Eve that was unearthed recently? Well, let's see. Even in the book of Enoch speaks of the Nephilim, the giants of renowned knowledge and wisdom. The Christian Bible makes them out to be these vile giants that eat and destroy the living, the good works of God. Okay? So he flooded the world to get rid of them. Okay? But yet the Jewish Dibbit box was a house for these spirits that were considered malevolent, hostile, like demonic entities, like poltergeists. Or how about the soul of an enemy that you want to isolate, torment, and torture for all eternity? Wow. All of these play right into that, right? Huh. But yet you call this taboo for the spirit and the soul. Okay? All right. Let's see here. You want to call it a servitor. What is a servitor? Okay. You obviously don't know the definition of what a servitor is. Okay. Because if you did, you would know that a servitor is a patron, a patroness. Think of it like a legionnaire, if you will. Okay, you have certain spirits that work for you because they want to redeem themselves. Okay, that is what a servitor is. Now, if you go into a mandragora, okay, a mandragora, this is something that you create. This is a spirit or a clay. Think of the Jewish, oh, what do they call that? The golem, okay, made of clay, paper, whatever. You can create this as a servitor, okay? It is controlled by a name or a text, a scroll, okay, some or an alphabet, something that is personally to that practitioner that this being is a servant to. But again, you have to understand the difference, the very definition of what a being a servant or server means. Okay. Again, go right into your any dictionary and you can look that up. Okay. So again, you don't know what you're talking about here. All right. Now, if you have a patron or patroness, then that is something where you work alongside a certain entity or being, even spirits. Okay. A nganga or a cauldron, a spirit box is something where these you can house these spirits, and that this is a place where they can come congregate with you, utilize, and come and go as they see fit freely. It is not something to be feared. It is not something to be controlled. Okay. It is a mutually working relationship. So the fact that you sit here and talk about dominance, nowhere in that post did I mention anything about dominance. I talked about a definition of a man beating his spouse to death, becoming remorseful of it, and over a certain amount of time having relations with that the corpse of his spouse, his wife. And if you think about it, and you can actually Google this on Google for what we refer to today as necrophilia crimes, there's a wide range of instances where the corpse of a loved one has laid in a bed and a person has literally slept next to the corpse for days, months, even weeks. You got people who have done weird, much more heinous things than that, and you sit here and say that you're trying to control it. It's morally wrong to do something like this. Obviously, you don't know your history. You don't know the difference between cultures within mystical or magical practices, that of spiritualism. You don't even know the definition of what necromancy is. So let's break it down here. Necromancy, as we know it today, comes from the modern Greek definition, known as necro, the practice of corpse divination. This is done through conjuration practices. And okay, this is where you bring a spirit forth from the grave. Normally, it's a recently departed. Okay, nigromancy, the art of black magic. Okay, is the Latin definition of it. This is where you utilize things like zombie practices, the zombie in Haitian voodoo. This is where the practice of creation of a servitor comes from. And that's basically what a zombie is. It is a servitor that you have created, a golem, if you will. It is a mandragora, in a sense. You're practicing black magic to perform vile magics, such as killing off an enemy, using that enemy as a servant, only to cut them loose at a certain time and they are starting to come out. You look under YouTube and you can see numerous videos just on that alone. You go back into ancient Greek and you got Nikia. This is associated between necromancy practices and shamanism, where music such as drums were played to get into a mantra, a meditative, perspective, if you will, a setting where you're able to project your spirit into that of the realm of the dead. Look at the Odyssey, Homer's Odyssey. Okay, prime example there. That was a rite of necromancy, a rite of Nicaea. Okay, you go into even if you get into blood sorcery, it was associated with the Hermetics as a practice of rejuvenation. Okay, because of the Da'ath system of the tree of death, it is decay and it becomes quite painful for a practitioner over a certain amount of said time. So to ward off that decay, hemomancy was incorporated into necromancy and later was separated and became associated with vampirism. Okay, so it doesn't matter if you're going by Christian standards, shamanistic standards, necromantic standards, Zoroastrian standards. Okay, you can even go into modern day, modern witchcraft standards. It doesn't matter if you're uh, practicing mage, hexa, strega, stragoi, bokor, hungan, membo, capilata, a merimberos. It doesn't matter if you're a warlock or a witch. This is a path of solitary practices. Okay, and if you don't have the knowledge to back up what you're preaching, you should not be commenting on somebody else's posts, especially like that. Okay, and this just goes to show you the lack of education. We talk about how America is one of the highest educational places out there, but in truth and actuality, you're more like fourth place at this point. It used to be where great men strived for greatness. Not anymore. Literacy, gone hill massively. Half the things that today's youth say, don't even understand, and when you speak, they don't even understand us. It's kind of ironic, really. But I mean, you look at the mathematical perspective or the geometric shapes. I mean, look at German mathematics. Look at the Japanese mathematics. You can actually go underneath YouTube and look up these videos and watch how they bring it out. I mean, they're taking a simple equation like in Generation X, where it was, say, for an example, let's go with multiplication. Okay, let's go with say let's go with 6 times 9. Okay, 6 times 9. Okay, now, or let's go with 9 times 9. Okay, 9 times 9. Simple mathematics, right? Simple. You just count it 9 times and you have your answer, right? And well, Germany and Japan have taken it and they put it into a box, literally a square box. They've put a plus sign in the center and they put the numbers. Okay. And the way they, on the outside and on the top, and what they do is they do the adding, the subtracting, the multiplication, and then the answer, all within that box, the 4 boxes within that square. You've taken a simplistic equation and you made it into long division. I mean, they're teaching things that like algebra that we would learn in high school, for an example. They're teaching first graders today. Okay. So again, you speak about education, but yet, and communication, but nobody does it. Opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one. And as Patrick Swayze so colorfully put it in Roadhouse, opinions vary. Okay. And everybody has a right to their opinion. Okay. But we've gotten into this tradition of, if you're in a coven setting or a particular house of school and you go against that, then you become the vile villain. You become the bad guy. Okay. You become wrong. And everybody's going to anally invade you. They're going to come on and make it into a joke. Oh my God, have you seen the guy's profile? Wow. Wow. He seems like a weirdo, a troll, whatever. You put down historical accounts, dates. You put down scientifically proven historical facts. They just look at one word or one term and they just run with it. This is called laziness. I'm not going to reply to such drama and childish behavior. But this type of video needed to be made in this case because of the fact that that one comment, I mean, it was like 3-4 different paragraphs of him trying to sound intellectual and yet not one thing backed up of what he was saying. Not one fucking thing backed up. This is why I always put out to you guys, back up what you preach. Because if you can't put forth your sources, then you shouldn't be teaching. You shouldn't even be speaking. In fact, you shouldn't even be practicing any form of tradition, any form of magic. You shouldn't be, because you don't know your history. You haven't done your history from a world's mythology. How about cultural practices of how bones were used in divination? They were called bone runes. How about bones in hexcraft? How about medical practices and how we have, because of these practices of defilement of corpses, that we have what we have today in knowledge of medical practices? How about the psychology aspects of the mind, the personality traits that used to be associated with astronomy, the zodiacs, astrology in general? How about numerology, mathematics today? How about hemomancy, known as phlebotomy today? Okay? Anthropology practices. How about the doctorate of divinity? How about degrees that you have to go and earn today when you could have just simply learned from a witch or a warlock in the past? Become an apprentice. Today, the legal standards say that you have to have a license. You have to go to school to get a job. Wow. Interesting how that works. Now, this is what I would recommend to this individual, this Stephen. Get underneath your dictionary, find the term necro, and go down through every single definition that has necro in it. Necrophagia, necropolis, necromancy, necrophilia, and so forth. I think there's like a half dozen to a dozen different ones. I think there's like 6 to 8, 6 to 10 or something like that, just in the dictionary. And that was as of 2011's Webster's dictionary. Probably more now, since we're into 2024 and they like to update those damn things like on a yearly basis. At least it seems that way. But in the old days, education was free. It was encouraged. Today, everything has to be limited. It has to be hush, hush. You know what I got to say to that? Just like that. I don't give two shits what you think. I do my own homework. And I put my homework out there for those that want to learn, that want to grow, to evolve, not only through knowledge, enlightenment, but also through their practices. The rest of you, I don't give two shits about. Hecate. She is the Titan, the goddess of witchcraft, necromancy, justice, and ghosts in the underworld. Goddess of death. Got much respect for her, just like I do with Anubis. And yes, even the goddess Isis, the mother of witchcraft. Even Hel, Kyrios, goddess of the realm of the dead in Norse mythology. How about Baba Yaga and Slavic, the old hag? Mm, love working with her. But also working with Kakashi the Deathless, a form of immortality, the black hen, if you will. So, with that said, I'm going to wrap this video up. I wanted to put that out there. And for those of you who wish to know the group on Facebook, it's called the Brotherhood of Male Witches. And I did one on mullein as well. I've been putting some herbs in there and what they can do for the body. And I mean, I've got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different posts, about 11 different posts on here. Some replies and others, just people making a practical joke out of it. Like I make magical smokes using mullein. One's a medical condition, which is a stage 3 COPD. I'm on oxygen. Yes, mullein helps me quite a bit, which is a fact. It does help you breathe. And one of the biggest components of mullein is the fact that it will clean out your lungs. Don't be surprised when you take it that you end up puking up a whole bunch of shit, because it does. Whatever's been in your lungs for years, it doesn't matter if you haven't smoked anything for like, say, 20 years, it's still there. And mullein will help get it out. It'll help you take in much larger breaths and oxygenate your body even more, like you're about to dive into a deep dive into water without a scuba, self-contained breathing apparatus. So you breathe in heavily, repeatedly, like type thing, because you're oxygenating your blood at that point. Think of it like that, because you're oxygenating not just the blood but the body. And the more your lungs take in, the more you're going to have throughout your body. And it's a good thing. It's more maneuverable in that case. So, I mean, it does work, and it can be put into a tincture, an elixir, herbs and stuff, powder form and everything. But you got people that ask some very good questions, like, is this a short-term fix, or would I have to add this 3 times a day to my water for life? And it's like, do your homework, bub. You'll understand, It is also excellent for helping you get to sleep, yeah, which is true. And I mean, but it's called the Brotherhood of Male Witches, and it's only for men in that group. There's no women. But it seems like no matter what group that you're in these days on Facebook, they always treat it as a joke. They'll always gang up on you and try to bully you into submission and quietness, and treat everything like a big ass fucking joke. So I wanted to do this video specifically on necromancy and the various different types of perspectives and how it's viewed, because obviously there's a lot of people that claim to be something, and it's always easy to claim to be something. Now, for those of you who follow me, you've seen my live videos on my channel. You've seen my TikTok channel. You've seen, the rituals and stuff that I posted on there, even my Facebook account. Okay. So, I mean, you've seen that I back up what I preach, not only through my personal rituals and rites, but also through even my clients have seen a huge, just, I wouldn't say 100% success rate, but it's way up there. Okay. Because the point of practicing witchcraft and sorcery, no matter what it is is to constantly define and redefine your practices, making it more and more potent. This is why knowledge and enlightenment is something that is very good. Education is good, and I support education because it will help you to become enlightened. It'll help you to become better practitioners, and it'll help you to evolve. Because as your knowledge grows, so does your outlook, so does your understanding, so does your practices that you can apply it to. Okay? LK, welcome. You're welcome, my friend. So you can actually see where all of this plays into effect and why herbalism is played into necromancy. How certain perspectives look at it. A lot of it is throughout history is viewed as either divination, forms of divination like the urn filled with water or blood, the corpse uh, aspects of, say, necrophagia, where you're sleeping with the dead, or necrophilia, where you're literally doing things to a corpse, defilement wise. Okay, this is something that has been a part of necromancy for hundreds of thousands of years. This is nothing new. It's only your perspective from a societal perspective and viewpoint of legal laws and how you're raised that see this. Okay, this is how you are forged. Your personality and your thought forms are guided. You're literally being brainwashed into believing a certain thing. Okay, think of it as the devil or Satan being evil. Well, if you've read your Bible honestly and took a good earnest look at your Bible, nowhere in the Bible does it say that Satan is the enemy of God. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that he is a murderer. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that he is the bad guy. Okay? All it says is that you should stay away from those that practice divination, those that practice necromancy. Stay away from the necromancer, stay away from the soothsayers, stay away from the seers. Why? Because they're associated with death magic, the death current. They're viewed as being unclean. Okay, they're considered to be spiritual, like a prophet. I mean, if you think about it, when God or an angel chooses to commune with a prophet, and there's numerous stories between the Old Testament and the New, wow, is that not a form of a conjuration? A spiritual conjuration where a spirit comes to you and communes with you? It's called spiritual communication. It is communion. Look at the book of Acts, verses 1 through 4. Everybody suddenly knows everybody's language. Wow. Are they not in a dream state? Wow. Interesting how that works, right? But yet, as time grew, morticians, history has shown that morticians, the grave digger, religious personnel such as priests and priestesses, to funeral home directors, the embalmers, the caretakers, the collectors, they're all seen as unclean. But you want to hone in on one term? That shows that you're uneducated, unknowledgeable, not worth anybody's time to even reply to. And the sad part is we see this more and more in today's world. So what I did was I turned around and I had published numerous essays through the Anthropology of Sabbatica series that was put forth by Mr. Edgar Cavall, a well-known occultist from South America. Yes, he's associated with E.A. Coetting and Asenath Mason, Bill Duvendak, Orly Stewart, J.S. Garrett, and S. Connolly, and all those big-time cultists. But You look at when you get these books, you'll notice that there's numerous essays from various different authors, known and unknown, in these books, from personalized traditions and practices to historical accounts. I choose to put out mine through anthropology perspectives because you can look at it from a wide range, from religious to archaeological to folklore, mythology, you name it, and it actually supports it with references, dates, eras, and sources. Okay, I think it's better that way because then if anybody who's wanting to delve into, say, witchcraft or necromancy or become a black magician, a sorcerer, okay, can take those sources and those references and delve into them and go, wow, I didn't know all this. I mean, I thought just from the YouTube channels or what people have been posting that this was what this was about. There's so much more that is not even discussed. There's so much more that's not even there. Nobody even knows about. But when you start talking about it and you start getting in there, all of a sudden people are like, oh, no, 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 that's illegal. You can't do that. You have to limit what you're saying. Political correctness. What happened to the First Amendment right of freedom of speech? But yet you're going to sit there and violate the bullying laws of the federal guidelines? Wow. You're going to limit and deny somebody else's religious beliefs, which is also a part of the protected religion status, personalized religious acts. This is what transpires in today's groups. It's no longer about enlightenment. It's no longer about bettering yourself. They're just a house for children. That's all it is. A house of children. This is why you'll find the true practitioners leaving those groups and going, I'd rather associate with this individual because they're learning. They're putting forth actual knowledge. I put personalized rites and rituals together where I've used a Dybbuk box, the house of spirit, that I wanted to torture, that I wanted to isolate, and wanted to put concealed in a concealed box for all eternity. Okay? And I tossed it into a river during a flood. 3 days later, that box was gone from that river. It was washed out into the ocean. And water is one of the most densest properties out there, but it's also the most purest. It's the softest stuff on earth, as Bruce Lee so colorfully put it, and yet it can fit into any container. Okay? And people, more experienced practitioners than I, looked at me and went, awesome job, brother. Awesome job. Because I started out with my patroness and I started utilizing vile magics. And as I was doing this over a 3-week process, more and more came to light. And it was like, why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? And I just started going with it. Next thing I know, I didn't just have a cursing jar. I didn't just curse the individual. I put him in a cursing jar. And then from the cursing jar into the Dybbuk box and everything. And I just kept doing it. And next thing you know, you got this big ritual that later was disposed of, forgotten, and walked away from. Wow. And this is stuff that has been done throughout the ages. This is called growth. It's called enlightenment. Okay? This is why I support education. So you'll know true practitioners because they will actually put their stuff forth. They're not going to give two shits about drama. They're not going to give two shits about getting into an argument with you. It's a solitary practice. We're not a coven. We're not, a temple, even though you can join a temple if you want. There's nothing wrong with that. But just keep in mind that it's your practices, not theirs. And if you try to go outside that, you'll be dubbed an outcaster. An outcast. You'll be dubbed a monster, a warlock from the Anglo-Saxon and Welsh perspective, a betrayer, oath betrayer, user, liar, that type of stuff. So you really want to back up what you preach. All right. So this is why I do these videos. This is why I do my videos, because I want you to know this is what's out there. This is what the true practices are and how it's seen throughout history. It's not what today's people think. It's not this watered down bullshit. And trust me, what I've just covered here and in my essays is just a fraction of what I've discovered. And that's over the last 7 years worth of just dedicated practice of necromancy. I started walking the path of the lichdom, about 4 years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago. And I now have about 7 essays that I've written of 4,000 words, plus words. But it's not about ego. It's not about pride. It's about the knowledge and the truth and the practices, because that's what it's about. It's about aligning yourself with the current. It's not just a physical practice and lifestyle. It is also a spiritual pursuit of enlightenment. It's up to you to evolve, not someone else, but you. So with that said, always back up what you preach with numerous sources. Have a good day. I want to thank LK for jumping on here with me. I want to thank Stefan Delmo for jumping on with me. And I just realized there's a lot of different posts here. He was named Sekla. Hecate came to me when I was 13. She helped me. Good. Chill. LK. Thanks, Michael. Always enlightening. Yes, 100. Moda B, my brother. It's crazy. Night, fellow peoples. Good night, Stephen. It's 10:34 a.m. for me. LK, I'm working, so got to go. But thanks and bye. All right. Have a good one, LK and Stefan. And for the rest of you, keep up the knowledge seeking. All right. Have a good one.